Welcome back to exercise 6B in unit 4. This is Apple-Pear. This is part 2. We're going to pick up with putting the bite in the apple, creating our pear by uniting two shapes and putting them together and submitting in MyWarren. So I'm going to go over here and go to where my page is and add a page. And page 2 is where we'll put our pear. Now we'll repeat the process. We'll add a frame. We'll make sure it's letter. And we'll lock the frame. So we're now on page 2. Page 1 has our apple. So we're on page 2. I'm going to go back to our apple. I'm sorry about that. I forgot to make a bite in our apple. There's my apple. One thing I forgot is if I go on my apple shape and I make an ellipse, let me zoom in here. And I'm just going to make a shape like that. It doesn't matter what color it is. I'm just going to make like a bite shape. There's my bite shape. And it's on top of my ellipse. If I want to take a bite out of that apple, make it more like an apple, I'm going to select my apple shape, and then I'm going to hold shift, my shift key, and click on this shape that I just drew, this ellipse. And then I'm going to go up here to these Boolean operation. They say Boolean groups. You could join things, you can take bites out of them, they kind of combine them. So subtract means it'll take like a cookie cutter. This shape will take a bite out of that, so it will subtract whatever's underneath it, including itself. So I'm going to choose subtract selection. Now I have both selected, the apple shape and the circle shape or the ellipse, and I'll do subtract selection. And now it made a little bite. Now, unfortunately, it brought the subtract part above the leaf and stem. And I should have done that ahead of time. That's why it did it now. So I'm just going to move my subtract below the leaf and stem, and I'm all right. So it's leaf, stem, subtract. And subtract is the apple shape. It renamed it subtract because I did that subtract operation. All right. Sorry about that. Sorry about going out of order, and I'll go back to page 2. Now we are going to use the same kind of operation to make our pear. So I'll make an ellipse, a small one. Now you can just make this like maybe 240, 250, something like that. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just make it so it's round. And then if you want to copy this, you can just do Control-C, Control-V, or Command-C and Command-V. If you're on a Mac, that's copy and paste. Or you could probably go over here and go edit, duplicate. They have Command D, which is edit duplicate. That's probably easier. So Command D or Control D if you're on Windows. And it made a duplicate. Now it's right on top, so you have to move it. And make the bottom one bigger, just a little bit bigger, and then kind of center it like a snowman. So you kind of have like a medium snowball and a big snowball. We don't have the head snowball in here. Now that doesn't look like a pear yet. But we're going to highlight these two shapes, meaning we're going to use our selection tool, select both of them, and we're going to align them so they're centered. You don't want one of them, off, over here like that. You want them centered. So highlight both of them and center them. And now what we're going to do, we're not just going to group them, but we're going to join them together using one of these Boolean groups, and we're going to use something called a union. And we're going to click on our union. Now, one thing I just want to point out, when we make a union, if you go in here, there's a little arrow, and it still has the ellipse. There's the one ellipse. There's the other ellipse. It still has them, so it's not permanent. You can still do things to each one. It's not a permanent operation yet. Now, if I go back to the apple, same thing. If I go to the subtract, you can see I still have my ellipse. So if I ever wanted the bite to be smaller or anything, I can still go in here and edit that subtract operation. And I'll just close that up for now. Now let me go back to your pear. I'm sorry for going back and forth. I should have done this ahead of time. But now that we have this union operation, I want to make it permanent because I want to edit this anchor point. And right now we still have two circles or two ellipses. So what I can do to make this shape permanent is I could go here and choose flatten selection. It's like convert to curves in Gravit we used to do, or convert to shape. So I'm going to flatten the selection. So that means union now has no little arrow. It's just one shape. And if I edit shape, you can see I have these anchor points here. Now, what we're going to do is just remove this anchor point and then remove this anchor point. Now, let me just point this out before you do it. If you select this anchor point and you go to delete it and you hit your delete key, it deletes the whole shape. So I'm going to undo Command Z or Control Z and undo that. So don't do that. What you'll do is you'll hold shift. So hold shift, select this point, either one. You could do this one. I'll do this one first. I'll select this point. Now it's selected. and I'll hold shift, and then I'll hit my delete key. There, it deleted it and it kept it together. And then I'll click on this one, I'll hold shift and hit delete. That deletes the anchor point. And that way you can go and kind of, you could tweak your shape a little of your pear, but actually it doesn't look too bad the way it is. You can make it more like a Bosque pear or something. You know, if you wanted to make it longer, you could pull this out a little bit if you wanted to, make it a little more different, whatever. We don't have to really get into all the details of pear shapes right now, but that looks pretty pear shaped and it's all one path. And I'm done with it. So you can hit done. And what I'll do is I'll put a gradient on it or a fill first. So I'll go over here to fill. I'll choose a nice kind of like lime green color. I'll make it a little more kind of less saturated, I guess. Or maybe I'll go a little in the yellow mode, so it's a little more olive-ish. And now that it has that olive color, I'm going to go up here to radial again and move the olive color to the end and move this color to the front. Now I'm going to use my highlight color, make it yellow again. So make sure you select in blue, make sure you select in blue your highlight color, which is in the middle, and I'll go down here and make it yellow, and I'll go up here and put it in a nice yellow color, and also make this transparent thing solid. I want it solid, I don't want it transparent. And I'll move this up a little, that little dot, I'll move it up. I'll move this down so it's a little more contrasty, so it looks like a highlight. And then what I'll even do, like we did on the apple, I'll move this over and just click here and add another color. And then instead of a dark green, I'll actually choose like a red. I have a red here, or if you just choose a regular red and then make it kind of dark. Now you might say, well, that looks terrible. What is that? But if you stretch this out, then you can almost have this kind of like a little shadow at the end. Let me make it a little more redder. That's that color there. And then I think you can move this thing on here too. You can move it up here, and you could even move this thing here if you want. So I just want a little hint of it down here. Actually, if you move it this way, it kind of goes over so that the light source is up here, even though that seems kind of the opposite. But that's about what I want. This looks all right. Even if you added another one, you don't have to do this, but even if you went here and you decided that I want white in the front, I want a white highlight, you can add white right in front of that. If you want a little bit of a white highlight there, that gives a little shine. Again, if it's not perfect, this does not have to be perfect, so please don't stress yourself out over creating a pear. But that looks pretty good. And now I'm going to close this, and I'm not editing the anchor points anymore. So I can go back to page 1 and highlight this with my arrow, and then hold shift. And if you did the stem, select the stem too, and I'll do copy. You could go file, edit. It says copy as, I don't know why it's giving me copy as. Actually, just select both of those and do Control C if you're on Windows, or Command V if you're on Mac. I'll do Control C. And then I'll go back to page 2, and I'll just paste Command V or Control V on Windows, and it pasted the apple. Let me undo that. There's my stem, and I'll hold shift, and there's the leaf. Let me do Command C. I'll go to page 2, Command V. There it is, and I'll move it above the union. It's actually there, but it's above, so I'll just move it above there. And you could have moved the union below that. And now I'm just going to move my leaf up here. Probably could be a little smaller. It still has the drop shadow on it. I'll move this up here. I'll just put it behind the leaf so you don't see the bottom of it. And I'll just highlight everything and just kind of move it around. Now you could bring the apple in here with it if you'd want to see the apple. You could bring the pear here. You don't have to do this. You can leave it as it is. If you're done with it, you can just do this. But you could group this whole thing and do object group selection, which makes the apple all work as one. There it is, group, and then everything's inside it, the leaf, the stem, the subtract, all that kind of stuff. That way, if you copied this, it would all kind of move together as one. So you could copy this. If not, skip this step. Don't worry about it if it's a problem, but you could copy it and then go back to page 2. You could paste your apple and kind of work with these a little bit. You could even You could even group your pair and go Object, Group Selection, so that the pair moves as one, and then you have your apple here and whatever, if they're like that. Now you can't see your byte though, which is, it's okay. You could see your byte on page 1 if you want. So there's the apple pair. You could switch the order of these. You could drag the one above the other. Make sure you don't drag it on top of it. When you do move these, make sure it keeps that white line. Don't have it with this blue box. Actually drag it above like that. So now we have that apple byte in front of that. Now I guess that's okay. I guess the apple would be a little bit smaller, be something like that. I stretched it a little bit. That's okay. I actually think it looks better behind the other one. So let me move it back. Again, when you drag this thing, make sure you don't have that blue box because it'll go inside it. Make sure you go behind everything, in between. And there's the apple pair, and that looks okay. So if you didn't put them together on one page, not a big deal. Now, I'll click over here. 6B apple pair, if you didn't name it, make sure you name it. If it still says untitled, 6B apple pair. And then all you have to do to finish up is hit the share button, and anyone with a link can view it. So then choose copy link. You don't have to email or do anything here. Do copy link, and then go back to coursework, go to unit 4, and this is for fall 22, and go to 6B Figma apple pair. It'll say Figma, not Gravit. Now I open it up just to record the video, so this may change a little bit, but click on the link for the assignment. And just like the other one, what you're going to do is you're going to add a comment. You're going to insert a link. Now you're going to paste. Whether you right click or whether you do Command V or Control V, you're going to paste that link. And then you're going to go down here and choose New Window. So the link opens in a new window. And it does say Figma, and it should say Apple Pear in there somewhere. And then just hit Save. And this is what your link should look like. And it should be a hyperlink. If you click in here, that should be gray. And if you forgot to make it open in a new window, you could always click on the link, go here, and make sure it says New Window. And I'll cancel that because it already does. And then I'll hit Save. And then that's it. Then once you have your link down here, your Figma link, it says Apple Pear in it or whatever you named it, then you're good. So it's part of your comment. So you sent me a link in your comment. So that's all you have to do for this exercise. I could close this up. And when you're done with this, you just have to go back to Files. So when you're done working in here, you could always just go back to Files. It saves automatically, so you don't have to do like a file save or anything like that. You could just go back to Files when you're done. So again, page 1, you have an apple. Page 2, you have a pear, or you group them, you copied them, you put them here. And the only tricky part is copying the leaf and stem. If you skip the stem, not a big deal. You know, do the best you can with this, with your gradients, but if you end up with something like this, that looks pretty cool, or even if they're on their own page, that's fine too. So that's 6B apple pear. Again, when you're done, just go back to Files, and this is where you can make another file. I think we may do one more exercise, kind of a Halloween themed exercise. It won't be that difficult. We'll just trace a bat or something and do some kind of layout with bats. I'm hoping, unless people struggle a lot with this. So if you ever need to go back and open it again, it should show up down here with all your files when you go down here to see your files when you're in drafts. So if you ever need to reopen something, you should see them down here. So that's exercise 6B, apple pear, working with vector art, this time in Figma. We're using it as an alternative to Illustrator right now, but we still have the ability to edit vector paths.